Believe, an LA football podcast.
Touchdown Rams!
Touchdown UCLA!
Recovered by the Chargers.
The Trojans back in front. Touchdown Wildcat.
With your host, Ryan Dyrud, on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's up, Los Angeles football fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Believe in LA Football Podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network, Los Angeles' #1 network for professionals. You can also find us on LAFBnetwork.com, your destination for Los Angeles football, Rams, Chargers, Bruins, and Trojans. Big day, I guess technically it was yesterday, for Trojans fans. Trojans faithful, Trojans alumni, Reggie Bush finally welcome back to the Trojan family after being sanctioned from the university for a decade. So pretty cool. Still don't fully understand that punishment. A lot of moving parts and all that scandal and what was going on, and just forbidding a player to be recognized by a university seems odd to do to a young 20-year-old kid. But he is finally back. Now it's time to get him that Heisman back that he was vacated because of that same said scandal. So I think it's time to give him his Heisman back. He was asked yesterday if he's thought about it, if he'd like it back, and he basically said, yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't, which why wouldn't he want his Heisman back that he deservedly won? Whatever you think about the scandal that happened, it really had nothing to do with his actual play on the field. It wasn't like he cheated with steroids or anything of that nature. It was, booster. I won't even go to the full extent of it, but essentially a booster helping his family with like housing, and there was other moving parts as well. But it didn't affect him winning the Heisman. So maybe it affected him going to USC, but hey, that's a whole different rabbit hole we can go. So Reggie Bush back with the Trojans, very good. Hopefully, I'm gonna get him on the show. We'll see. He's a tough kid. He's a good character, tough kid. We'll see what we can do. Got a great show for you today. Got a good guest. Real fun conversation. Michael Peterson, he's the community editor for SBNation. He's also the lead Chargers writer for Bolts from the Blue, part of SBNation. Does a bunch of stuff. So, great guy. Followed his work for a while. So we just talk some Chargers, talk some quarantine, talk of NFL during this time, how their offseason's been spent. It's a fun conversation. One of those I planned to be like 20 minutes and ended up being about 40. So shows that we were just having fun talking football. So hopefully you guys enjoy it too. Looking forward to that. Rams talk. We're not going to do a lot of Rams today. We'll do more Rams Monday. I kind of want to get into, on Monday, I'm having a guest come on, and we're going to talk a little bit Kaepernick. I know I've shied away from talking about him on this show. I just, it was so much clickbaity stuff involving him, and whatever side you're on his, I think the guy can clearly still play in the league, whether it's a starter or not. Anyway, we can get into that, but I've kind of just shied away from it because it was so reported on and talked about that I just got sick of hearing about it, and I wanted to focus on just LA teams. But it is interesting with the Rams currently not. Wofford is their backup quarterback right now. So would Kaepernick, if the price is right, be a better backup than Wofford? He would obviously bring in a ton of media scrutiny, which maybe you don't want, that circus that comes with him. But, in the LA market, trying to do anything you can to give exposure to your team, new stadium, everything that LA is about. The Rams are already kind of the shine here. The Chargers are one kind of playing catch-up, and they've had a good offseason. But adding Kaepernick would just put that much more fans watching Rams football, even if he doesn't touch a football the entire season. And maybe you get some hate for it too, but hey. Anyway, so I want to have that discussion. We have an article actually going up on LAFB Network. If it interests you at all to check that out, a little opinion piece more so about his football, if he would be a good fit, if he would be an upgrade at the backup position. Again, this is not about taking over Jared Goff. Just strictly backup, and who knows what he's willing to pay for. There's been reports that he's been asking for a lot of money. Some reports saying he's never been offered, so he's never asked for money. So who knows? We'll get kind of into that. I'm going to do that Monday. So today will be more Chargers-centric just because, great conversation with Michael. So I think let's just get into that. Before I do, got to tell you about my friends over at BetOnline. Probably sounds like I say the same thing because I call them my friends every week. But, they are. They sponsor the show. We appreciate you. Sponsor Believe in LA Football. I know right now there's still no sports. It's coming back, though. NBA, going to have a season ending. Who's your championship? Who you got? Lakers, Clippers. I'm a Nuggets guy. I know a lot of people hate on the Nuggets, but hey, they've had a good season. I don't think they have enough firepower to get past the Lakers and Clippers when it comes to playoffs. But all this time off, you never know. You got the Bucks, the Celtics. Hockey's coming back. Who's going to come out of that? They have a fun round-robin style tournament to get into the playoffs. And they have a one-game play-in, if you will, for the top 4 seeds. It just affects their seeding. Baseball, maybe. Owners and players can never figure it out. They're having to mess with all their share pay. But anyway, sports are coming back. But right now, NASCAR's back. Madden, NBA 2K simulations are going on. It seems like there's a UFC fight every single weekend. And, of course, there's the online casino, poker, and blackjack. So be sure to go to betonline.ag. Use the promo code MYPOD100. That's MYPOD100 to receive your welcome bonus. If you're not on if you're not on BetOnline, you need to get on there now. BetOnline.ag, your online wagering solution. Once again, that is BetOnline.ag, promo code MyPod100. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on to my Chargers conversation with Michael Peterson. All right, excited to welcome on my next guest on the Believe in LA Football podcast. He is the community editor for SBNation and the lead Chargers coverage writer for Bolts from the Blue, Mr. Michael Peterson. How you doing, man?
I am not too bad, man. How are you doing?
Doing well. Another beautiful day here in LA. I know you are not necessarily from the greater Los Angeles area. How's the weather and life treating you where you are?
Yeah, so I'm in Iowa. So it's probably a weird thing to hear. It's a roundabout story of how I ended up getting associated with the Chargers. My father actually is from Northern California. One of my brothers just actually was in San Diego for like 4, 5, 6 years before moving away a couple of years ago. So like I've had connections and love the place. I was actually in LA this past February for our SBNation like work summit with the rest of my California site team. But it's nice here, but I would trade some days for some LA weather for sure.
Yeah, you guys get a little more, if you want to call them 4 seasons or a very cold winter, which we don't really have here. I remember driving through. So growing up, I didn't tell you this off air, but growing up, I'm from Denver, Colorado, and we used to go to Minnesota every summer. It's where my grandparents lived on a lake out there. So we drive through. Usually we drive through Sioux City, but every now and then we take a different route and go through Des Moines. And I remember one year going through. I don't know if you remember this. This was, oh man, I was probably 10, 11 years old, and it's when there was torrential rainfall and there was flooding. Mm-hmm. The whole city flooded. I remember we ended up having to stay, I think, in Des Moines or right outside of Des Moines because you literally couldn't get through. I can't remember if it was I-80 or I-70, which freeway, but literally it was flooded with 4 feet of water. That's my one kind of memory of Des Moines, Iowa.
That was 2000. That was the summer of 2008. I was going into my freshman year of high school, and I remember I was playing baseball, and so like I was practicing and doing stuff kind of through some of those days. And I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I live in Des Moines right now. Cedar Rapids, so that was. So the Des Moines flood was like fine. It was bad, but compared to the Cedar Rapids flood, the flood of '08, as we call it, was like one of the worst floods like in the country's history, and it completely destroyed like downtown. It was incredible, and I was still young enough where it's not totally in my head, but I remember driving through downtown and seeing everyone sandbag and try to prevent as much damage as possible. And there's businesses downtown and buildings that just have marks like notched off to show you how high the water was at its peak. And it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. It's one that I don't think ever gets talked about. It's just because it's middle of America or Iowa. But I remember being actually stuck because we couldn't get through going back home. And that was, gnarly floods. So don't think that happens out there. But, speaking of national crises or weather permitting or whatever, we are in a pandemic right now. I know LA is very different than some of the other cities and states around there. What's life been like for you in Iowa during this? Obviously, you work remotely anyway, so has your job really changed much? Or, how's life been out there?
So, yeah, I mean, I actually started this job like second or third week of February. And like you said, it's remote. Everyone, like, there's a lot of people I work with who are in California, but there's people in like Ohio, obviously here in Iowa and Arizona and everywhere else. But work hasn't been too different. So even when the pandemic's over, not much is going to change for me again. But I think the biggest thing is, working from home, you want to like force yourself to get out and do things, and you want to be more social, especially when you have that time. And that's not a possibility right now. I've seen some family, I've seen, some very few friends, but for the most part, it's just like everyone else, man. I'm blessed and lucky to have a job that's work from home, remote anyway. But yeah, it's, I could use a little more social life right now.
Yeah, I know. I think we all could. So we'll get there soon. Are you guys farther ahead than, I'm not saying what we are, but are you guys more open now? Restaurants are open, bars are open.
I believe so. Our governor, Kim Reynolds, didn't really do a whole lot in the way of like shutting down in the first place, and a lot of people were pretty upset about that. Like when everything was shutting down, she allowed some huge horse auction in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, for like 1,000 people to go, like right when this whole thing was like,
At its
entering
peak.
its peak or getting closer to it, right? And so we are pretty open. Yeah, I mean, restaurants have recently opened for dining and stuff like that. My barber thankfully opened up a couple weeks ago, and I was able to get a haircut finally after 2 months. And,
Yes.
I think we're more ahead of you guys just because you're such a much more dense, in terms of population area. Things are seeming a little bit more normal, I guess, right now. I don't know how close you guys feel to feeling normal, but I'd say we're pretty normal right now.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting there. We went to our first bar and restaurant last weekend, and it's just different, the vibe. There's all these like blockades and like the clear fences, and then the bar we were at, everything they served was like in to go. So I ordered like a whiskey rocks, and it was in like a plastic cup, and we ordered a pizza, and it came in like a to go box with paper plates. So just very, I guess, different now, but still, we were out at least and able to enjoy that. So that was cool. But yeah, different times. But obviously, as content creators like me and you are, the show must go on. Even we don't even have football, but there's still stuff to talk about, stuff to cover. Plenty. Luckily, with the NFL, I mean, all leagues have stuff to go on the off season. The NFL is just such a beast of a league that there's just so much to talk about every day of the year, really. Especially for someone that covers it as much as you do, covering as many teams as you kind of do as well. So when you look at the NFL right now, I think it was just announced this morning or yesterday, they extended their virtual offseason to the 26th. And then after that, then teams can all get back to their facilities. I know some teams already have. Coach Lynn, we've seen him at Hogue Center out in Costa Mesa, California. So just overall, what's kind of your opinion on how the league has handled this? And do you agree with keeping things virtual? Do you think teams need to be back? No mini camp at all? Do you think that affects them? Do you think it is what it is? Or do you think they've handled it really well? Kind of a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, no, definitely. But honestly, through this whole thing, you've got two sides. You've got the people who think it's all overblown, and you've got the people who think it's probably, the end day sort of thing. I'm kind of somewhere in between. But if I had to, I guess state where I am in the spectrum, I'd rather be safe than sorry. As someone who covers sports, and you understand this as well, we want sports back as soon as possible. So when everything was, getting worse and worse, and states and governors and whomever else were putting their foot down and saying things are closed, blah, 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 like I didn't argue about any of that stuff. Like I didn't think twice about, not being able to get a haircut, not being able to leave my house, go out to dinner, any of those things, because I knew that as we, if we were to hunker down and, I guess in a term suffer, but that's just very, contextual. Like it's just stay at home, don't do anything. The better we were able to do that more consistently, for as long as possible, I knew that sports would probably come back sooner, right? Like it was all based on these things. So I would get almost upset seeing these people talk about wanting to get out of their houses. Well, for me and for you, you probably are like, stay home, because then I get my jobs more interesting faster, and like I have a higher chance of keeping my job, because the longer this goes, you never know how that thing kind of turns out. If certain companies continue layoffs and stuff like that. So in the end, like I really didn't mind any of the shutting down or anything like that. As far as the NFL goes and what they've done, I'm not surprised. Again, I think they only got really one shot at sort of being prepared enough, and then starting things up back again. Because I mean, if they don't do their due diligence and make sure everything's covered, then there's a chance, it's a small chance, but a chance nonetheless of them starting up the league and then something happening and then being like, I don't think we can continue doing this. Like, there's just a rash of sicknesses and illnesses, and they're like, I don't think it's safe to do this. Von Miller and other current NFL players had coronavirus, and Von Miller came out and said that it was like actually scary the first 4 or 5 days that he had it. And if you imagine, more NFL players having that experience once the league starts up again, it's just going to look so bad. So at the end of the day, and there's my cat screaming at me, she already walked in. I think they've done a good job. I'm not surprised that they extended the virtual period to the 26th. Ian Rappaport came in and said that some teams may end their period earlier, but officially for all teams to be done, that date right now is June 26th. It doesn't look like there's any, in-person on field work this month whatsoever, which again sucks. It's, it feels like it's later in June. It's only June 11th. And, we got to wait until next month to see anything again on the field. So there's still a couple weeks left until stuff gets rolling. But I think at the end of the day, they've done a good job. They've done it probably the right way, the way they should have. But again, like you and me, we just can't wait for things to just start happening.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. I think at this point in the season, it's really not hurting them too much doing everything virtually. I know it hurts rookies not having minicamp and getting in the locker room and, getting around the guys and being able to build relationships. That's obviously a big, bummer that they can't do that. But, now you can hopefully at least communicate virtually. But as far as just the veterans, guys that have been there, half of them didn't show up to these OTAs, minicamps anyway. They were all on vacation anyway. And so the biggest thing is that hopefully by them doing this, it allows for them to be at training camp come July. And then just announced, too, that there's a potential that they cut preseason in half. Do you think that'll actually happen? Do you agree with that? I know players have been outspokenly against preseason anyway.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, again, to see them start to at least discuss the idea of cutting preseason in half. The way things have gone, they give us a date and they just say this is a tentative date for, the virtual period ending. Well, I think the first original date of that virtual period ending was, I think, over a month ago, right? Like they just kind of keep pushing this off, and the closer we get to, whatever date they just said, that they're going to keep pushing it off because things just aren't getting better at, a rapid enough pace. And so seeing how that keeps happening, I could easily see, we get to maybe around June 26th and they're like, okay, maybe we extend it a little further, or maybe they just don't have on field as soon as they want. And I think maybe this will creep further and further into July. And at some point in July, you're like, there's not enough time for on-field stuff and to have a 4-game preseason. Like, I think, honestly, my opinion is that will happen. I think teams and players alike, everyone will probably want less, games that don't mean anything and have more time to get the rookies and undrafted players more integrated into the system, to have more time to build the foundation that these players rely on through the entire regular season. This is the time where, they build some of their mental toughness. They build some of that acuity in terms of getting down the playbook and all the nuances about not only knowing the plays, but how to run the plays exactly and getting used to each other. I think more time to just have the simple things down, right? To get the fundamentals, to get the team chemistry down will be far more important than preparing for a game against the Rams, who isn't an opponent that the Chargers play this season, whose win or loss in that game does not matter in the grand scheme of things. I think at the end of the day, more time with your teammates, focusing on building those foundations is going to be way more important.
Yeah. The preseason is more of a dollar figure for the NFL bottom line than it is actually beneficial to these teams. What I think will actually hurt is the fact that they've already come out and said in training camps there can be no joint practices. Everyone's kind of housed at their own facility. Because, just being there last year with, Rams and Chargers at a joint practice, Chargers and Saints at a joint practice, both Anthony Lynn and Sean McVay unanimously said this is way more important, way better than preseason games. Because we're actually you get multiple reps. You're not getting, a 3-down drive with your backup quarterback goes 3 and out, and all of a sudden there's no reps. You can rep for 2 hours to really get those reps in. So that I think will kind of hurt these teams. But it is what it is. You're healthy, and as long as you can, like you said, get the fundamentals down, play together, get at least the timing down with your offense, they'll be okay. And we'll see. I'm sure we'll see a little learning curve in the first couple weeks of the NFL season. I even said last year the Rams, who I don't think played a single starter the entire preseason, there was that kind of gradual week 1 and week 2 where they did look a little bit sloppy, a little bit slow. There was a lot of penalties. They had a lot of penalties that they had to shore up. So I think we'll see that maybe more widespread across the league, but it is what it is. So with that being said, this will be the last kind of coronavirus question, if you will. Some states have come out saying they will allow fans. I think Texas is one that said they'll allow 25% stadiums full. Obviously, California, where the Chargers play, is not one of those yet. Do you think, just your opinion, I don't know if you have any sources on this, but do you think we will see fans, or is it going to be a lot more empty stadiums come season time?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I've seen a lot of schools and teams talk about, percentages of their total capacity possibly being allowed into the stadium. I think, again, the safest bet is not having fans. And I guess that's something they'll probably talk to the players about, talk to the teams in general about, like, if you had the option between being safe and not having fans and maybe allowing some, like, I guess no fans with crowd noise pumped in, or, 25-30% of fans in the stadium. And maybe they have crowd noise pumped in as well. So maybe it is as close to a real environment as you can get combining the two. But again, especially in California, I don't see how they're going to progress enough. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're progressing fast enough at this moment that you can see them having fans in the stadium at the time. I mean, right now, the stadium still isn't done being built yet. And who knows if it's even going to be ready for the preseason games. I mean, I've seen pictures of the stadium. I know the Oculus board's been up. They just stopped for a couple of days, obviously, to the tragedy that happened there involving the iron worker. I mean, all this stuff adds up. And I mean, personally, I'll throw this question back at you. Do you see the construction working well enough and them getting the stadium? Like, the stadium doesn't all have to be done, but are the locker rooms going to be done and well enough to host games? Are I guess if there's no fans and they don't need to worry about the seats being as prepared and ready, I don't know if no one's going to be sitting in them. Really, they just need the field to work, the locker rooms to work, and like some of the hallways to work, and I guess restrooms and stuff like that. So flipping this on you, do you see that being like the case? Do you see them progressing far enough to get that done?
They keep saying they will. So I was there for a media tour in February. And first of all, this place pictures don't even do it justice. It is amazing what this stadium is going to be. Just the sheer size of it. This is off topic, but one thing I don't know if you knew, or a lot of people probably don't know, but the design of the stadium, how it comes to a point, the like rooftop.
Yep.
So where that point is, there's a 6,000 seat music amphitheater in that point.
Oh, cool. I've been to the Jacksonville Stadium where they have something like that.
It's insane. So it's like the stadium, then there's like a promenade there'll be a bunch of like vendors and shops, and then like an amphitheater. But anyway, it's a beautiful stadium. But when I was there in February, I was like, there is no shot this is done in 5 months or whatever that is till, preseason starts. Now, I know they've made a ton of progress since then, but in February they didn't even have seats in yet, and so they've been working around the clock. But, I mean, to answer your question, they keep saying they're going to be done, but it certainly seems like for an organization that both organizations, obviously, mainly Stan Kroenke, needs fans there to make revenue, but they might be in a better spot to be like, you know what, we're going to be cutting it close. It might not be the worst thing ever if we can't have fans and just kind of eat more money. I know they asked the league for more money, so we'll see on that. Would you, not as a media member, but as a fan, would you go to a game if you were allowed?
Yes.
I think I would. For
sure. I mean, before I was a media member, I became a media member from being a big enough fan to turn this into a career, right? So, like, I would probably risk a lot just to have that semblance of reality. Again, I'm from Iowa. I haven't even been to a ton of NFL games in person. My wife's from Minnesota. I've been to 2 Vikings games, one each of the last 2 seasons. Took her to her first Vikings game before our wedding last year, a couple days before our wedding, so as a wedding gift. And unfortunately, they lost to the Bears and didn't make the playoffs. But
that was a bad loss.
Yeah, I would definitely go. Like, seeing the U.S. Bank Stadium, that beautiful new place. Obviously, it's been there for a handful of years, but like the feeling I got just seeing that magnificent piece of work, to imagine going to the SoFi and again, like hearing you talk about it only gets those feelings a little stronger. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I would definitely go to a game if I was allowed to.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of fans feel, and that's just kind of what fans want is the option. Like, hey, give us the option. If you want us to sign a liability form, you're not liable if we get sick, so be it. But I think even if they don't do like we've been all talking about, if they do 25%, 50%, if they this is more work that a lot of stadiums probably don't need, but say they almost make little mini suites in the stadium, put little like clear blockades so every like third seat is closed off. But I think plenty of fans would be like, yeah, sign me up. I just want to be out of the house and be at a game, and if I have to wear a mask, so be it. I'll wear a helmet with a mask. But let's talk a little Chargers a little bit. You were on a call yesterday with a few players. Donald Parham, the new tight end that played in the XFL. I covered him a little bit. He's, I think, a great addition. Love to see how he plays in this new Steichen offense. Uchenna Nwosu, know him well from USC, great linebacker. And then Justin Jackson, running back out of kind of more your neck of the woods, a little bit, Northwestern up there. So, first of all, walk me through some of these conversations. I don't know what order. I saw you tweeted some stuff about it, but let's start first, I guess, just to make it easier with Donald Parham. I mean, what did you guys talk about? Maybe some key points that he wants to bring to the offense or what he expects this team to look like. Did you talk football? What kind of how did that combo go?
Yeah, so the structure of the call actually went reverse to that. So we had Jackson first, then Nwosu, and then Donald Parham. And the entire call, so usually when players come on, they say like, it'll be 15 to 20 minutes and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Justin Jackson spoke for 45 minutes. Uchenna Nwosu, he spoke for about 15 to 20, is a lot of time. And the same thing for Parham. Both Jackson and Nwosu's time, not a single football question was asked. And that's not terribly surprising. Obviously, I'm still fairly new to being within these circles, but it wasn't surprising at the same time. It was a little surprising just because I thought maybe, this would be a time to talk about some of those things that, haven't been right to talk about, I guess, in recent days. But with Justin Jackson, and I'm sure you followed him and understand how involved he is in politics, and he's not afraid to make his opinion well known to fans and anyone else who follows him on social media platforms. But the conversations were really, really good. Now, it was a lot, so I don't have a ton of specifics off the top of my head, but it involved, people asked about Anthony Lynn's column that he wrote, that he was interviewed for in the LA Times. And a lot of players talked about how much that meant a lot to their team. Jackson mentioned that, a lot of stories from players themselves, just about, their experiences over the years growing up. He just said, he didn't name names. He didn't want to get too personal with it, but he said there was just a lot of eye-opening stories told within the team, a lot of bonding, a lot of good things, support, and everything that you want for these players from their coaching staff. That's what they've been getting, which is really great to hear. Jackson talked forever. He had a lot of good things to say. I think Gilbert Manzano of the OC Register put out a really good article kind of talking about that. Same thing with Daniel Popper. He didn't write something yet, but he had a big blurb about a quote from Justin Jackson that I advise everyone to go read whenever they can. But then Nwosu came on, and it was honestly just more of the same, but Nwosu was a little more reserved. He didn't have as many, long-winded answers. He didn't really dive into a bunch of stuff. He kind of kept everything surface level, even though he was asked kind of the same questions for the most part. The most energy we got from Nwosu was when someone asked him about, his experiences growing up, and he started cracking up, and he said something along the lines of, he goes, I have so many stories to tell you guys, involving, the police or just his experiences growing up. And he was honestly laughing because he's like, they're just insane. He said, I got so many stories. And he tried to tell one of them without making it too long, but it involved, he was falsely accused of stealing someone's wallet or purse when he wasn't even at the place. I think it was during school. I don't know if it was in high school or something. He was absent that day. And yet for some reason, someone accused him of being the perpetrator in this crime or whatever it was. And so, apparently he's got so many, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who do, but he kept that, again, very short. He's not the most talkative guy. I've interviewed him once before, last year when I had a Chargers podcast that was with Blue Wire a while ago. But anyway, those two, again, no football questions whatsoever. Was just kind of everything that's going on right now in society, which was it is the right thing to talk about. But then Parham comes on, and it was all football questions. There wasn't anything that was asked of Jackson Nwosu that was asked of Donald Parham, because it was the first time we all got to talk to Donald since he was signed. And I'm stoked for the signing as well, personal standpoint, because I actually had him on an XFL fantasy team that I was running.
Killed it.
Yes, yeah. And so I'm a big fan of Donald Parham. I got to watch him at the Senior Bowl a couple of years ago down in Mobile. He came out of Stetson. Stetson's actually in the football conference of the school I played football at, which is Drake University in Des Moines. They were a newer school to that conference. So that was cool to see him from a league where at last time I checked, that league didn't even have actual football scholarships. So that was really cool to see. But anyway, people started asking him, what he took away from the XFL. why he found so much success in the XFL, what he attributes it to. A lot of it came down to the air raid offense that Hal Mummy ran with the Dallas Renegades was much more similar to what he ran at Stetson, which was a more wide open, pass heavy air raid type offense. And the other offenses that maybe he played with when he first came to the NFL, I think he had a stint with Washington that didn't go so well, but he basically said, I just felt way more comfortable in a pass heavy air raid offense because that's the type of tight end he is, right? He's 6'8". The guy's going to go up and get the ball. And he showed off some really good speed for a guy his size, right? He doesn't even look like he's trying that hard, and he's running away from the safeties. And if this offense is going to continue being a vertical type offense, then yeah, I for sure see Parham having a role. You have Hunter Henry, who is your do-it-all tight end. You have Virgil Green, which comes in. He's going to come in and help out in the run game, and he's still a decent receiver. He's not used that way, but I still think he's very able. And then you bring in Parham, who is going to be a guy who can get down the field, and the staff would be crazy to not use him in the red zone. Again, 6'8", with raising his hands up, like Justin Herbert doesn't have to be nearly as accurate as you would want him or Tyrod when throwing to Donald Parham because of that catch radius, especially in the end zone. Man, you can just throw it up to the guy and hopefully he comes down with it. And he showed that type of play in the XFL. Yeah, he had, I think, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns. And they were caught in traffic in the end zone. He showed the things that will be translatable to the NFL. One person asked him, what other interests he had from other teams besides the Chargers. And he actually, made it seem like the Chargers were almost the only team to reach out and see if they could sign him. He couldn't name any other team. He said his agent kind of, dealt with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't name a single other team. And he has, someone else asked, why did you choose the Chargers? And he goes, well, they just kind of gave me the opportunity, which again tells me that there wasn't, I guess, a lot of people giving him an opportunity. It was reported that other teams did, but he couldn't really name another one, or whether he wanted to or not, I guess. But overall, it was a fairly short conversation with Parham. He seemed pretty new still talking to the media. So his answers were fairly short, but good guy, really excited about his potential in the offense. It was overall a good conversation across the whole board, the whole press conference. Nothing bad whatsoever.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think Parham, when fans get to know him, they'll be really excited. And you mentioned the red zone, and just you figure, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams on the outside. You can have Parham and Henry if you want a 2 tight end set, and you have Eckler out of the backfield, or even throw in Joe Reed or KJ Hill in the slot. That's a very, very lethal red zone offense that has a lot of ability and hopefully can do a lot better than they did last year, because that was one of the kind of their struggles, that turning red zone opportunities into touchdowns instead of field goals. So we'll be excited that. One thing I wanted to ask you quickly about Jackson, I saw that maybe it was Gilbert's post. I love Gilbert, great guy. I know him fairly well. But he said something about, I don't think players will kneel if the NFL hears our voices. I'm paraphrasing, not quoting. Did he talk on that much, or can you specify kind of what he was getting into from that? Just.
Yeah. So the original question asked was basically, you hear like Adrian Peterson talked about it, and some other NFL players have echoed the same thing, which was like, oh, you should expect, I think everyone's going to kneel, like it's going to be a league-wide thing.
Mm-hmm.
So someone just asked him, hey, are you and the Chargers, how much talk has there been about you guys as a team, or about how many players and who or what are going to kneel this season or plan to do that? And he brought up that the kneeling is being done for a reason. It is to get a point across. It is to bring attention to this issue. And basically what Justin said was, we won't have to kneel or do any of this stuff if we're heard and the changes that need to happen are done. So he just said, if those things get done, maybe no one kneels because we got done what we wanted to get done. As long as, they're protesting police brutality, and as long as, those things are very apparent in society, they're going to continue. So, that's all it was. He just said, there's a chance that if enough gets done here up until the regular season, maybe no player will actually feel the need to do it because finally things have changed. Finally, they were heard and all their sentiments, have been acknowledged. So, and I think it's a great point, people who are against the kneeling may think like, oh, is this going to go on forever? And they're saying, as long as it's going on, there's, we're not going to watch and blah, blah, blah. Well, they've pointed out and laid out kind of their plans and their ideas, this movement that's, this is what we want to get done. If this gets done, then we won't have to worry about it anymore. That's all he was saying.
Yeah. Which, I mean, obviously is for the better of all humanity if it gets done. So hopefully the league does listen, the city officials, the state governments, all that. And then, it can be better for just human race and for people everywhere, players. And I think it's great what they're all doing and how involved everyone's getting and the conversations that are happening. And, so it's cool when you hear guys are coming out more and more and more. And you mentioned Anthony Lynn's piece, which was awesome with Elsie Granderson out here in L.A., so cool. That's cool. You got to do those conversations with those three guys. I didn't really talk about Nwosu much, but I love him, so that'll be fun to see him as well. But a couple just quick last few questions for you, Michael. Really appreciate it. Talking to Michael Peterson of SBNation and Bolts from the Blue, covers the Chargers. Off the top of your head, put you on the spot. Who's kind of your breakout star you have for the Chargers? I know, there's some guy, it could be offense, could be defense, but who's a guy that you kind of label as this is a guy who's going to turn it around this year or kind of break out?
So I love questions like that because there are, especially when it comes to the Chargers, I think there's a number of guys that you can make pretty solid arguments about breaking out. Let's start defensively. And this isn't like super original pick, but because everyone keeps kind of bringing him up, but I think that is Drew Tranquill. And the guy showed kind of exactly what you would want from a former fourth round pick. As a rookie. So what did he do? He was second on the team in total tackles with only starting 3 games, right? At an important position like middle linebacker that hasn't been the most steady for the Chargers in some years. He also blocked 2 punts. And when I knew everyone knows about the one at Green Bay because it was against a really good team. And it was just a really pivotal moment where, they were up already, but they just kind of kept hammering home just how much they were dominating the Packers. Well, I totally forgot for a sec that he had one in the first week of the season against the Colts. And I mean, there's something to be said about players who don't waste any time making their presence felt, making an impact for their new team, whether they're a rookie or second year player or whatever. And I mean, he offers a skill set that, again, not a lot of these linebackers we've had in the past, have possessed. Like, Denzel Perryman and Jatavis Brown were the 2 basically main linebackers for this team the last couple seasons. And, at least they were drafted and developed, aside from Thomas Davis, whatever. But like both those guys are under 6 feet tall. They're not that large. And unfortunately, they just weren't getting the job done. So all of a sudden you see this paradigm shift with what the Chargers have been drafting and getting in their linebackers, where now you have Kenneth Murray, the rookie, who's 6'2", 241. You have Drew Tranquill, who's 6'3", or 6'2", 235, 240. And all of a sudden you've added length to your linebacker room and didn't lose any, prowess in stopping the run, right? And you've added coverage ability with Drew Tranquill, which hasn't really been there for the middle linebackers on this team. You signed Nick Vigil, who's more of a weak side coverage linebacker, probably plays some special teams, but all of a sudden they turned a weakness into a strength. And I think Drew Tranquill is going to be the catalyst for that group to become a strength on the Chargers. In a press conference earlier this year, Tranquill said that whenever he was on the field as a rookie, he was the Mike linebacker. He was calling the defense. And that was surprising because I think a lot of people, including myself, thought he played both Mike and Will as a rookie. Turns out just middle linebacker. And that's a testament to a rookie who came in and called the defense every time he was on the field. He said he loves calling the defense. He just prefers that he's the one making the calls, that he'd rather do that than have to hear it from somebody else, which again, those are all traits that you want to hear from a potential, leader of your defense. So I just think he's got a knack for making an impact, and he showed he can make an impact. So combine all those things. I don't know how he doesn't have, a heck of a year, a breakout season in his sophomore year. If he gets, the starting job. So I really like Tranquill on defense. There's tons of, evidence to show that that's probably going to happen. Now, offensively, this is a little more tough. First I think about second-year players who maybe didn't do too much in their first year, and there's not many that come to mind. I think you could argue Justin Jackson in his third year, if he's able to stay healthy and be, play the complement role to Austin Eckler. He's been super efficient. Especially last season, he had 26 or 29 carries and he averaged over 8 yards per carry. And that included a long touchdown, like a 60-yard touchdown taken back because Dontrell Inman held somebody against the Detroit Lions, which was really hard to see. that stat line would have been way better. But honestly, if I had to put my finger down on a guy to break out, it's actually going to be wide receiver KJ Hill, their 7th-round pick out of Ohio State. Now, this past season, I didn't get to go out to the Senior Bowl, but KJ Hill put on a show. In the previous year, another Ohio State receiver put on a show at the Senior Bowl, and that was Terry McLaurin. And we all saw what Terry McLaurin did this year as a rookie. Now, KJ Hill's not the same athlete. He's not the sub 4.4 40, but he's a heck of a route runner. And KJ even said he used to watch Keenan Allen film when he was at Ohio State. And if you watch Hill on tape, you can see Keenan Allen, the way he runs his routes with nuance and sets guys up. And this guy runs a flat 4.6 40. Like, he's not going to run past anybody. But he was able to run past some people because of the way he was able to get open and create distance with his route running. And I think that's going to be so valuable in an offense that lacks pure long speed. Ever since Tyrell Williams went and signed with the Oakland Raiders, like, they don't have that at the receiver position. And so this offense is going to churn by people like Keenan Allen using his route running to get open. It's going to churn with Mike Williams doing what he's good at, catching downfield passes, contested balls, and holding on to passes across the middle. But KJ Hill, man, there's something to be said about a slot receiver type guy who can get open at a moment's notice, especially for a young QB or an inexperienced QB. Not saying Tyrod Taylor is super inexperienced, but like, he doesn't like throwing the ball down the field too much.
Yeah.
He's going to check down a lot. Herbert's probably going to check down a lot. I don't see how, whether it's Allen or Hill in the slot, how that guy isn't going to catch a lot of passes. So I see KJ Hill. They need to solidify a wide receiver 3. You know?
Oh yeah.
Their wide receiver 3 last year was Andre Patton, who was 8th or 9th in catches among players on the team.
Yeah.
There was 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, 2 receivers at least in front of him. So they need to solidify a third wide receiver, regardless if he's like 3rd in catches. They just need an extra presence like that. So I think KJ Hill's the guy, and his skill set is just super translatable to the NFL. You see a lot of elite athletes who can't translate to the NFL, even if they're running a 4.3. But KJ Hill at a 4.6 can get open, and that's something that's going to help out in the NFL.
Yeah, I love KJ Hill. I love the pick. The fact that he was there in the 7th round was still just shocking to me. I mean, played at a big boy school, big boy conference, had the most catches in Ohio State history ahead of guys like Mike Thomas and all the great receivers they had there. So obviously production. I look a lot at production versus the, stats at the combine. When you have production, I think it's going to translate well. So I love that, and I love Drew Tranquill. I remember he was drafted too. It was like, if he can stay healthy, this is going to be like the steal of the draft, because he was so good at Notre Dame. Has just had some injury history and showed last year the talent he has. And I'm curious how they'll line them up this year. I know a lot of depth charts have Kenneth Murray at Mike and Tranquill at Sam. I actually like it the opposite. I like Tranquill playing the Mike, and I like Kenneth Murray playing Sam. I think we use that speed and coverage better. Murray, that is. So we'll see how that breaks down. But yeah, I love both those players. Quickly looking at this year's draft, who was your favorite draft pick? Another on the spot one. Was it KJ Hill? Justin Herbert?
That's a toughie. So I think off the bat, KJ Hill. And, for all the reasons I just went on and on about, love KJ Hill. But for the sake of, being different and throwing another name out there, I do like Kenneth Murray. Now, at the time, I was a little off about the pick because I thought, this team needed a offensive tackle, left tackle to be specific, much more than they needed another off-ball linebacker, especially with Drew Tranquill coming out and Nick Vigil signing in free agency. Like, I didn't think off-ball linebacker was as important to trade up back in the first round and get your guy. But I actually have had my eye on Kenneth Murray since before the 2018 season. I saw him play against UCLA in week 1. Mm-hmm. He had the cowboy collar still. He didn't wear it this past season for some reason, but he looked so cool with a single-digit number, cowboy collar, just running, playing like a madman, just being disruptive. Like, it was just so great to see. And just as a fan, like, seeing a player like that, it's just hard not to like him, to root for him, and hope for their success. So the Chargers ended up getting Kenneth Murray, and he needs to clean up some stuff in coverage. But I actually spoke with his linebacker coach, Brian Odom, after he was drafted, and asked him some of these things. I asked him, like, hey, on the film, this is what Kenneth Murray looks like he does. It looks like he just is a QB spy, and it looks like he just takes running backs to the flat in coverage. But, like, that's entirely it. And he goes, yeah, that was kind of all he did. But I will say that, he mentioned that just because Kenneth Murray didn't do it in college doesn't mean he can't do it in the NFL in terms of actually being a coverage linebacker. Like, their defense is so aggressive and disruptive that, like, just when you think you know what an aggressive defense is, Oklahoma takes it to another level. Kenneth Murray's responsibility was if he got a run read, if he read that, oh, it's a run play, he was to pull the trigger and go. That's why it looks like Kenneth Murray blitzes a lot, but it's not a blitz whatsoever. He was so quick at sticking his foot in the ground and getting downhill that it looks like he's blitzing like every other play, and it's just not that way. Their defensive line are pure penetrating one-gappers. That's why you can see, some offenses get some big gains on them up the middle, because like if they just pick the right hole, or they don't get the right penetration, like they give that up. I mean, it's a pure get after the quarterback defense. But again, I think his skill set is translatable if he's able to kind of shore up some of that tackling. But again, like there's something to be said about a guy who has the sideline to sideline range, running off 4.52, I think it was, at 240 pounds. I think he's going to be great. Now, I know you mentioned a little bit about some depth charts, talking about where some of these linebackers are holding up. If you go by just what Anthony Lynn said, Drew Tranquil more than likely is going to be the Mike. Kenneth Murray is probably going to be the Will, which is what Thomas Davis was obviously last season. Mm-hmm. And he said that Kaiser White's going to play that Sam position. And he specifically said that because the Sam position is a linebacker, the strong side backer that comes off the field during nickel and dime packages. And he's putting Kaiser there because apparently Kaiser is still dealing with lingering issues with his knee injury that he got as a rookie. And so by putting Kaiser White at Sam, that puts a type of a pitch count on him, because it means that he's going to have less snaps naturally, because that position just comes off the field, especially when they go nickel, which they do quite a bit. So if you kind of remember what Thomas Davis did, he wasn't like the most disruptive. He just racked up all the tackles, led the team in tackles in 2019. That's probably what Kenneth Murray is going to do. That is more of a coverage linebacker spot as well. And if he can, again, shore up, just being able to get on top of guys, being able to cover running backs out of the backfield, which are going to be different than most, running backs in the Big 12, then he's going to, earn himself a spot on this team, a starting spot on this team. Of course, he's going to be on the team, but and then, it'll put him in a good position to be a very disruptive player, a guy who will make an impact as a rookie. And what, the draft capital they gave up to get back in the first to get him, like, he better have that opportunity, or that pick's just going to look a little worse.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I love the pick. I actually spoke to a Oklahoma beat writer who covered him all the way back from high school, back when he was at Texas, and he kind of, what you were alluding to, said that one of his knocks was his football IQ, but in reality it was just the system they ran just made it so simplified for what he did and what he was asked to do on each play that it just made it look like he wasn't doing more, but not that he doesn't have the ability to learn a more complex system, but yeah, I like him in the Will, and I love that pick. Last one for you, and you can talk on it briefly or quickly if you want, but we did an article for fun kind of looking at what if the Chargers could have done differently. So you look at the draft, they took Justin Herbert 6, took Kenneth Murray 23, traded back up. What they could have done is taken Isaiah Simmons 6 and then took Jordan Love at 23. Are you a guy, just hearing those, you like what they did in reality with Herbert and Murray, or would you have been interested to see them take Simmons and Love?
That's such a tough question for me, because Isaiah Simmons was my number one for pretty much the entire draft season leading up to opening night. The week or so before the draft, it switched to I wanted Tua first, then Isaiah Simmons, and then I wanted an offensive tackle. Mm-hmm. I don't mind Justin Herbert. I like him. But when I watched Tua and looked at him real closely, there's something to be said about quarterbacks who look like they're able to be good quarterbacks outside of certain systems, that when they throw the ball, depending on, in a myriad of platforms, off balance or whatever, the ball comes out naturally. It's not like they have to fit themselves into their fundamentals. And if they don't do, everything they've been taught and drilled, that they're not going to be successful. So in the NFL, what do we see? We see guys like Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, guys who are able to make plays, extend plays, and throw off balance, off platform, and still complete, keep offenses going. And heck, just the plays that the wasp play that the Chiefs ran in the Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. It was literally, hey, run this route. I'm going to back up for 15 yards and then chuck it. Like, that's not a pure NFL throw. You don't drill that naturally, normally. Yeah. But good players are able to do that. And when I watched Tua, I just saw him have the necessary tools, and the way he moves and threw the ball, I could see him doing that type of stuff. With Herbert, I can't, because it just seemed like 5-yard crossers. Some of the throws he had at the end of the combine. It didn't look like he could just get back there, trust his arm, and let it rip. Like, it looked like he was guiding these 5-yard passes way too much, and he was getting a little into his head. So I'd like to see him just kind of unravel some of that, just trust his arm and let it go. So I guess going back to this, your original question, Herbert and Murray or Isaiah Simmons and Jordan Love. Honestly, I think probably Herbert and Murray. Now, that hurts to say because I would have done a lot of bad things to get Isaiah Simmons on the Chargers. But you look at Jordan Love's 19 season, and I understand all the variables that come into it, different players, different coaching staff. There was a lot of things that affected his season. And I guess you have to balance out whether or not he's the 2018 version of Jordan Love or if he's the 2019. Which one is he closer to? And if you meet somewhere in the middle, is that a guy that is a first-round pick? I'm not entirely sure. Would he have been worth, a late first-round pick, cool, early second? Yeah, trading back up for Jordan Love, I don't know. I don't like as deep as this draft was in terms of talent on the second day and the middle rounds. That's giving up a lot. I think a lot of sites, including Pro Football Focus, had the Chargers. They lost the most value based on their trades they made during the draft. So like them trading 2 and 3 for another first, it was like the worst value, ratio that they had amongst any team in the NFL. So a lot of people didn't like it. And to imagine them doing that for a quarterback who wasn't a surefire first-round guy, wasn't a surefire franchise guy, I just wouldn't be comfortable with it. I think if you're going to pick a quarterback in the first, like, there's some boxes he needs to check. And I don't think really any of the quarterbacks checked as much boxes as I would prefer other than Burrow and Tua. So, I like Murray enough. Herbert, I think, has some tools and stuff like that. He's a very much different quarterback than Phillip Rivers, something that this team needs. It's going to be refreshing to watch him play if he doesn't throw a bunch of interceptions. So I'm going to go with that first pair. Yeah,
no, I think I agree. And I'm really excited to see how Pep Hamilton works with Justin Herbert, who they brought over to be the new QB coach, another XFL guy. So, but long tenure in the NFL. So, Michael, man, this was fun. I appreciate you. I know I went way longer than I originally told you, so thanks for sticking out with me and talking some football. Where can everyone find you at?
Yeah, so if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is ZoneTracks. That's spelled ZONETRACKS. If that name's confusing, it's just a coaching point when you're coaching zone runs. But that's a whole different story. Yeah. On bullsfromtheblue.com is where you can find all my work, everything I do there. The Twitter account for the site is at capital BFTB _ and then capital C Chargers. I just started before the draft, the Chargers Lately podcast. So I'm not terribly, I don't do those like once a week right now. I need to. There's just not a lot of news, and I don't want to like copy everyone else who's talked about that news already. So I recently did one where we talked about the AFC West. Go on ahead and check that one out. It was a great conversation with Kenneth Arthur, who helps with the Chargers coverage at the site. But other than that, man, yeah, I got nothing actually.
Well, great. Well, hey, it was fun. I really do appreciate you. Stay safe out there. Hopefully things get back to normal, and hopefully we'll see you out here come training camp.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. I'll find you as soon as possible. Put it that way.
Sounds good. Can't wait. All right, huge thanks to Michael. Great time, great conversation. If you haven't checked it out, check out Bolts from the Blue. They do good work down there covering the Chargers. Not quite as good as LAFB Network. I'm a little biased, but they do good work. Michael does a great job, so I know he's excited to get out here to LA. Hopefully, training camp, so we will link up. But hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you all for listening and tuning in to the Believe in LA Football podcast. Hope everyone's safe out there. Hope you're helping people, doing something good for someone today that you didn't do yesterday. Things are normalizing a little bit, it seems. So yeah, that's been great to see. Me and my wife went to a bar the other night for the first time in 3 or 4 months. It was a very different experience. Everything's in to-go cups. Tables are all spread out. No cash accepted. So it's very different, but hey, it was good to be out. Good to be out with some friends, have some drinks, and talk shop. So anyway, all you guys stay safe out there. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to tune in Monday to the next episode of the Believe in LA Football podcast. Subscribe wherever you do listen. We're everywhere you listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn. We're everywhere. Hit me up on social media, Ryan Dyward, LAFB on Twitter. You can email me, podcast@lafbnetwork.com. Have a great weekend. Enjoy this beautiful Southern California sunshine, and we'll talk to you all on Monday.